The road into the hills above Kelowna was the kind people only took when they had to. By day, it looked harmless enough, a ribbon of pavement cutting between dry grass, orchard fence lines, and stands of pine that turned the wind into a constant whisper. By night, it felt older than the city below it, as if the dark had settled there first and Kelowna had been built around it later. Eli used that road every Friday after his shift at the warehouse near the airport. He liked the silence, liked the way the lights from the lake disappeared behind him until the whole valley looked like a bowl of embers. He had a habit of driving with the windows cracked even in winter because he hated the stale smell of his truck. That habit would come back to him later with a kind of cruel patience. It happened in late October when the air had gone sharp and the orchards were almost bare. He was halfway home when he saw the woman. She stood on the shoulder just beyond a bend where the road narrowed between two rock cuts. She wore a light-colored coat that seemed wrong for the weather, and her hair hung in damp strings around her face. Eli slowed without thinking. There were no other cars, no houses nearby, just the hiss of his tires and the dark trees pressing in close. When he stopped, she did not approach. "Are you all right?" he called through the window. She raised one hand, not waving, just lifting it a little as if the motion cost her something. "Don't stop here," she said. Her voice was so low he almost thought he imagined it. He frowned, and that was when he noticed the water. It dripped from the hem of her coat and pooled in the gravel around her shoes, though there was no rain and no snow and no creek anywhere near the road. "Do you need help?" he asked. She shook her head once, slowly. Then she looked past him, over his shoulder, into the truck's cab. The rearview mirror showed only darkness at first. Then a shape moved across it too fast to understand. Eli turned. The back seat was empty. When he looked forward again, the woman was gone. He told himself it was a trick of the light. A person walking down the embankment. A bad night and too much coffee. He drove home with his pulse hammering so hard it made his hands ache. He checked the truck twice before going inside. Nothing was there. At 2 a.m, he woke to a sound like fingernails scraping glass. He sat up in bed, listening. The house was silent, except for the furnace and the faint tick of the cooling stove. Then the sound came again, closer this time from somewhere downstairs. He grabbed the flashlight from his nightstand and crept into the hallway. The beam shook in his hand as he moved toward the kitchen. There was a wet line on the floor. Not a puddle, not exactly, a trail. Small drops leading from the back door toward the stairs, as if someone dripping lake water had come inside and climbed the first few steps before stopping. Eli stared at it until his mouth went dry. He followed the line back to the door and found it still locked. On the inside of the glass, written in a finger drawn through condensation, were 3 words, "Don't let it in." He stood there until dawn, unable to move. When morning came, the message was gone. Eli called in sick and spent the day with every light in the house on. He kept telling himself there had to be an explanation. Maybe the message had been there all along, hidden by breath. Maybe he had sleepwalked. Maybe he was losing his mind. But when he checked his truck, he found muddy footprints on the driver's side mat, small and barefoot, even though the doors had been locked the night before. By evening, he was desperate enough to ask around. The first person he told was his neighbor, an older woman who had lived in the area for decades and knew every story the hills could hold. She listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. When he finished, she told him to salt the doorway and not to answer if anyone knocked after dark. "Who was she?" Eli asked. The woman looked past him toward the road. "Depends who's asking." That answer bothered him more than anything else. He searched online, asked at the library, even drove down to the lake to look for old newspaper clippings about drownings or accidents on the back roads. He found nothing useful, only fragments of local rumor. Missing hikers, unexplained lights in the trees, a woman seen walking the roads near orchards after midnight. Most of it sounded like the kind of thing people invented to make empty places feel inhabited. Then he found the first real connection. A clipping from decades earlier mentioned a family that had lived in one of the old houses near the Hill Road. Their youngest daughter had drowned in Okanagan Lake after slipping away from a picnic. Her body was found 2 days later near a cove north of town. The article was brief, almost careless, but one line caught his attention. The family said the girl had been afraid of the thing that came back wet. By then, the nights had become impossible. Every evening, Eli heard dripping outside the house, not from the roof, not from the gutters, from the yard, circling slowly around the walls. Once he saw handprints on the bathroom mirror, small and spread too wide as if made by someone standing on a chair. Another time, the TV turned on by itself at 3:13 a.m., and the screen showed only static until a pale face emerged in the noise for less than a second. It had no features at first. Then he realized it was smiling. He stopped sleeping. He stopped answering his phone. He left work without explaining anything. He began to understand the pattern. The thing was patient, and it liked thresholds, doors, windows, rearview mirrors, reflections. Places where a person was forced to decide whether something was real. On the fourth night, the knock came. 3 slow raps at the front door. Eli stood in the hallway with the salt line at his feet, every nerve in his body screaming not to move. The knock came again, softer this time, almost polite. A woman's voice drifted through the door. "Please," it said. "I'm cold." He knew that voice. Not from memory, but from the road. The sound of it slid through him like ice water. Then another voice joined it, from the porch, from the yard, from everywhere at once. "Don't let it in." He started shaking so badly he could barely hold the flashlight. The door handle turned once, slowly, stopped, then turned again from the outside. Something dragged across the wood, leaving a wet trail in a long arc. The smell that came through the crack under the door was rot and lake mud, and something sweet underneath, like flowers left too long in water. Eli backed away. The knocking stopped. For one terrible minute, there was only silence. Then a soft sound came from upstairs. A footstep. He knew before he even looked that the second floor was empty. He knew he should have run. Instead, he climbed the stairs, one hand on the wall, the flashlight beam jabbing through the dark. The upstairs hallway was open and bare, every door shut. At the end of the hall stood the woman from the road. She was dripping wet now, water pooling at her feet, her coat clinging to her like skin. Her face was still hidden by shadow, but when she lifted her head, he saw the eyes first, pale and dull as pond stones. "You stopped," she said. Eli couldn't breathe. She tilted her head, almost curiously. Then her mouth opened too wide, wider than a mouth should, and he saw there was no throat inside, only black water moving slowly, as if something large was turning beneath the surface. He stumbled backward into the bedroom, slammed the door, and shoved a dresser against it. The thing hit the wood from the other side with a force that rattled the frame. Once, twice. Then the entire door bowed inward. Water seeped through the seams. Eli found the window. He hit the screen with his shoulder and fell into the cold night air, landing hard in the yard below. Pain tore through his leg, but he got up anyway and ran. He ran barefoot down the side of the house, through the orchard shadows, across the field where the frost stung his feet. He did not stop until the city lights were far behind him and the lake lay black and silent to his left. He never went back for the truck. Weeks later, someone found it abandoned on the Hill Road with the doors open and the radio still playing static. There were wet footprints around it, leading in a circle, as if someone had paced it for hours. Inside, on the windshield, the condensation had been wiped clean in one place only. In clumsy letters, someone had written, "You invited me in." People still drive that road on clear nights, especially when they're tired or angry or thinking too hard about the dark. Most make it home. Some say they see a woman on the shoulder in a pale coat, standing very still under the trees. Most keep driving. But if you ever stop and she looks into your cab, don't answer when she speaks. And if you find water on your floor the next morning, leave the lights on and do not open the door again.